never glows.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Dita Amelia Wahda Nurazizah from class 4A, and in this time I would like to tell you about the textbook under the title Life and Teachings of the Prophet Muhammad and its relevance in a global context. This book was written by the author Farida Khanam. Also, this book was published by Goodword books. Afterward, this book was published on the 1st of January 2006. This book consists of 158 pages, and it has the genre biography. Let me explain chapters of this book. For the first is Arabia before Islam. There are two subchapters. In the subchapter entitled Makkah, the author explains the history of the discovery of Makkah. In addition, the author explains its weather and Mecca as a strategic place for buying and selling. Furthermore, there is also a well-known and good clan named Banu Hashim, which is the clan name of the Prophet Muhammad. In Mecca, there is one important building, namely the Kaabah, which was built by Prophet Ibrahim and Prophet Ismail. Even so, the people of Mecca did not believe in the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They even built an idol next to the Kaabah. Above all, the author mentions the famous tribe namely Quraysh. Then, in the subchapter Characteristics of the Arabs, the author conveys very good qualities such as al-muru'ah, masculinity, meaning they acknowledge the truth, fulfill promises, honor obligations, support the oppressed, courage, noble character, patience, generosity, and friendliness. And the second is the life of the Prophet Muhammad. There are 16 subchapters in the chapter. First, about opposition intensified. It is the part telling about life after Siti Khadijah and Abu Talib died. And many Quraysh disbelievers opposed the Prophet's da'wah and threatened to kill him. Second, Islam spreads to Medina and describes the development of Islam in Medina after Prophet immigrated there. Third, the Prophet arrives at Medina after a journey to leave the infidels of Quraysh. Fourth, brotherhood of Islam between Ansar and Muhajirin. And fifth, the first Prophet's mosque, which was built when he arrived in Medina, named Quba. Sixth, the Prophet's family explains that he married 12 other wives after the death of Khadijah. Seventh, Jihad described about Prophet's resistance to disbelievers who fought him. The eighth, Battle of Badr, was the first war won by the Muslims against the Quraysh infidels. Ninth, the Battle of Trench was the siege of Medina led by the forces of the Quraysh of Makkah and the Jews of Bani Nadir. 10th, Treaty of Hudaybiyah, which has the aim of easing tensions between Muslim and the Quraysh who opposed his da'wah. 11. Call to the world, when the Prophet Muhammad sent his companions with letters to the kings of Pop kingdoms were contiguous with or close to Arabia. 12. Fall of Makkah. In this part, the Kaabah was purified all of the idols which had been placed in it. 13. Pardon for all. And at this time, the opposition began to disappear and many Quraysh disbelievers converted to Islam. 14. Battle of Hunain. Due to Banu Thaqif and Hawazin were highly perturbed by the development in Makkah. 15. First Hajj under Islam, which took place in the 9th year of Hijrah. The last is the farewell pilgrimage. The Prophet Muhammad performed Hajjatul Wada, which was the last pilgrimage he performed. The third chapter is the concept of worship in Islam. It includes 7 subchapters. First, about the implication of worship. Muslims must obey to something that relates to morals and human relations. and 5 pillars of Islam, which consist of the spirit of faith, salat, fasting, zakat, and hajj. These 5 pillars are obligations that must be carried out as a Muslim as a parameter of one's Islam. And the 4th chapter is the concept of the state in Islam. The author stated that the real owner of power is God, and He is the one who bestows its power on earth to whom He wills and who takes power from whoever He wants. The 5th chapter is talk about the status of woman in Islam. In Islam, there is no difference between the two as regards status, rights, and blessing. Indeed, woman must cover herself completely and don't show any part of her body except the face and the hands. The 6th chapter talks about war and peace in Islam. Although Islam is a religion that teaches peace, it also teaches about how to uphold the truth by fighting against the Quraysh infidels. And 7th chapter is talk about the importance of education in Islam. The revolution brought about by this learning explosion in a new age of highly developed culture and civilization. And it's not only in Arabia, but all over the world. After the demise of the Prophet, the companions spread out in the neighboring countries with the same spirit of seeking knowledge and imparting it to others. 2. Prophet Muhammad once said that an hour of reflections is better than 100 years of worship without reflections. And the 8th chapter is the concept of Jihad in Islam. According to Muslim jurists, or also called as fuqaha, can take place at 2 levels, like collective, which is called ijma, while the other is individual in nature and is known as qiyas. The next chapter is talk about human rights in Islam. In the practical sense, divine and human are so interrelated that sometimes it becomes impossible to separate one from the other. There are 3 subchapters. First is freedom of religion. And the Quran says that there shall be no coercion in matters of religion. And the second is justice and equality before the law. The establishment of justice is one of the most essential goals in the sending of the prophets and in revealing the divine scriptures. And the third is freedom of expression and dissent. Islam put an end to discrimination between human beings on the basis of race, color, status, etc. People were assigned a high or low status according to their moral worth. 10th chapter talk about the concept of social welfare in Islam. And according to Islam, all human beings have been created by one and the same God. And for this reason, they belong to one great brotherhood. The next chapter is discussed about the concept of spirituality in Islam. There are 2 different concepts of spirituality in Islam. For the first is God-oriented spirituality, which is based on the concept of God Almighty. And the second is man-oriented spirituality, which is based on man's soul itself being the treasure house of spirituality. And the last chapter of this book is the relevance of the Quran and Sunnah in modern times. Quran and Sunnah teaches us about monotheism, sincerity, good virtues, characters, and good deeds for the hereafter. These are the basic essence of religion and do not change with the changing times. I think the intended audiences of this book are teachers, parents, and also students. I can conclude that this book is really helpful for teachers and parents because this book conveys the history of the Prophet Muhammad in chronological order. So, they can use this book as a reference for studying to be taught to students or children in school school and at home. As a consequence, the children will know who the Prophet Muhammad is. Indeed, it will bring children closer and more in love with Islam. Last, it gives the result in an improvement in the goodness of human beings. And so, what I get from this book? After reading this book, I learned about the passions of Prophet Muhammad. It showed when Prophet Muhammad hijrah to Ta'if, and he was pelted with camel dung and stones until his body was bleeding. Gabriel's angel got angry and offered Prophet Muhammad to avenge the action of the people in Ta'if by throwing them using Mount of Uhud. However, the Prophet Muhammad was patient and instead prayed for them and said that they did not know it and that the descendants of the Ta'if people would be believers. To be honest, I haven't been able to be a patient person, and sometimes I'm in a hurry to get through something. Above all, Prophet Muhammad's patience really inspired me to be someone who is more patient when accepting calamities and challenges nowadays. This book provides the chronological order of history. It started from the introduction of Makkah, Prophet Muhammad's birthplace, his childhood, his teenage life, his prophethood, and his death. Although this book only has 158 pages, this book can summarize the entire history of the Prophet Muhammad in complete and sufficient detail. Indeed, this book contains statements that support the history of the Prophet Muhammad. Next, this book has a font that doesn't make my eyes dizzy when I read it. Afterward, the language used by the author is quite familiar and not too confusing. Last but not least, the author also completes an event in the story of the Prophet Muhammad's journey with some dialogues with his companions. I will talk about the lack of this book. It seems to me that although this book has the advantages that I have mentioned, this book still has the lackness. It could be better if the author provides not only the translated Quran verse and Hadith, but also the original Arabic version. As a result, the readers are able to know more about the original statements in Arabic. I think it's enough from me. Thanks for your kind attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.